I'm here with my good friend Doreen Moore, and Doreen has written a book that I'm so excited about. It's so intriguing. It's called Good Christians, Good Husbands, and it is about several leaders from past centuries and how they balanced their marriages and family or didn't. And Doreen has written other Bible studies as well. Doreen teaches every year, goes up and teaches at Dallas Theological Seminary on this topic. And this book has been endorsed by J.I. Packer and Matt Carter. And so it's something definitely worth checking out. So Doreen, can you tell us a little bit about what this book is about?
Okay, well, it's basically what you just said, Mary. It's about the marriages of John Wesley, George Whitefield, and Jonathan Edwards, three 18th century Christian leaders, how they balanced being married and in some cases having a family with being called to a public ministry. It was a time of great revival in both at the time, American colonies and in England, Scotland, and Wales. And all of them very strongly used a phrase from the Bible that was their calling to spend and be spent for the work of the Lord. And so they wanted to give everything they had for the work of the Lord.
Wow.
And each of them had different convictions what that looked like. So John Wesley believed that the work of the Lord was his ministry. And so to John Wesley, his wife was to follow along and just go along with it, and that the ministry always came first. To George Whitefield, well, we'll get into George Whitefield and Jonathan Edwards another day.
Yes, this is going to be the first part of 3 of these videos where we'll get to hear about each of the leaders. But today we're going to talk about John Wesley. So Doreen, can you give us a little overview of who John Wesley was?
Well, a lot of people know John Wesley as the founder of Methodism, which came actually later on in his ministry. But again, he was part of a great revival, grew up in a Christian home, yet he was very religious, even was a missionary to the colony of Georgia in the Americas. But yet, at the end of that time said, I went to convert others, but who will convert me? And so it wasn't until later on he went to a meeting and he heard Martin Luther's preface to the book of Romans being read, and it was at that point where he said he understood what it meant to be saved by grace through faith. And from that point on, shortly after he started his ministry, it was an itinerancy ministry. He traveled around to different places, and over 52 years, he preached probably about 40,000 sermons and traveled about 4,500 miles on horseback. So he was extremely dedicated to his ministry. I mean, back then they didn't have cars and airplanes, so anything they did was horseback, and you could be riding through the woods in the middle of the night during a thunderstorm. But it just shows his dedication. He wanted to spend and be spent.
Wow. So how did he balance his ministry and his marriage and family, and what were his views on that?
Okay, well, John Wesley was the one who did not balance it. As I said earlier, he definitely believed that the Methodist cause was his calling, and if his wife didn't follow along with that, then she was the problem. So John, and let me just say this, his wife did not like this very much. So very quickly after they got married, their marriage fell apart, and it was horrendous. It got so bad that about 20 years after they married, she left him, which was not the first time she left him, but it was the first time he said, I have not sent her away, I did not leave her, I will not recall her. And she did come back to him one more time and then left him again, and from that point on, he didn't even know when she had died. He found out a few days later. So it was just a horrible marriage. But part of his convictions, again, was that the Methodist cause came first. He even said that to his wife. He said, I will do anything you want as long as it does not hurt my soul, your soul, or the cause of God. And so he lived that out. So for example, one time she was very sick with a fever and looked really bad, so we immediately rode to her. And as soon as he found out the fever turned, and at about 1 o'clock at night, he got back on his horse and left. So he was never really there for her. He made the statement, I will not travel 1 mile less or preach one less sermon just because I'm married, whether I'm married or single. But the biggest mistake he made, the most intriguing thing for me about this whole thing is I think his wife could have handled all that, except he really believed it was up to his conscience and his right how he treated other women. And so he wrote very affectionate letters to other women. We have copies of them. For example, to one woman he wrote, "You are unspeakably near and dear to me." To another woman he wrote, "I want to see you. I want to hear everything that concerns you." And his wife was extremely jealous, which I can't imagine many women who wouldn't be jealous if their husbands, or vice versa, if wives were writing letters to men like that. He talked to another woman about his marital difficulties, which I think we've learned in all our years in ministry, that we've seen that is a disaster when you talk to the opposite sex about problems in your marriage. Just don't do that. And so he made that was his big mistake, really. I think she could have handled everything but that.
Well, I can tell from that snippet that we have so much to learn from him. And as in life in general, learn from what people do well and their mistakes they make.
That's right.
So.
Let me just say this. The big thing you can learn from John Wesley, if you are single, is before you get married, make sure you know that this woman or man, vice versa, has the same commitment to the call you have. And be careful how you treat women or men other than your spouse.
Well, thank you, Doreen. And who will we be talking about in the next video, part 2?
George Whitfield.
All right.
And then Jonathan Edwards, the last one.
We'll be back with those, and we'll look forward to them.